right, so today we start a new chapter, and we're dealing a lot with exponents in this chapter. Actually, that's what the entire chapter really is all about, is exponents. So we need to lay a foundation in 8.1, what an exponent is. All right, what makes up powers, bases, and how do I evaluate them? So a power is a product of repeated factors. Okay, so product is the answer. All right, so we'll see that in a minute. Exponent tells me how many times to multiply the base by itself. So one of the most common mistakes that I see is you see 2 to the 4th power and they do 2 times 4. All right, instead of 2 times itself 4 times. The base is the factor that will be repeated. The parentheses matter. So you're going to see this in today's lesson. If the parentheses are there, then and I'm evaluating a negative, then the negative repeats. If they're not, then the negative does not repeat. Okay, so that's going to be really important for us to look at in this next example. So what we see here in example 1 is a bunch of repeated factors. Y'all paying attention? Y'all are spacing out on me, okay? All right, let's start off with a fraction, 1/3. How many times do you see 1/3 repeatedly multiplied by itself? So you say 1/3 to the 4th power. That's it. Okay, so now let's go down to your x's. How many times do you see x repeated? So it's x to the 5th power. All right. Let's go to our decimal. It doesn't matter that it's a decimal. How many times does our decimal repeat? So 0.3 to the 3rd power. Then we're going to say x to the 2nd power. Please do not put dots in between the two bases. The exponent is actually what splits the terms. Do not put a dot in between them. So just say 0.3 to the 3rd and x to the 2nd. All right, I want you to try this next one. Pi and r. Pi and r. All right, remember when you're writing repeated multiplication as a power, do not put the dots in between the terms. All right, so Robert, what did you write? And r to the 2nd power. Did you guys put a dot in between them? No. Okay, just write it just like that. So now let's look at our last two that we have to evaluate. All right, so there's a difference here. What difference do you see between these two? Okay, one of them, the base is in parentheses and it's negative, and the negative is repeating. Okay, so the way that I would write this repeated multiplication is -7. I'm going to keep it in parentheses. And how many times did it repeat? 3. Okay, so now what's the difference with the other one? There's only one negative outside the parentheses. So the actual repeated multiplication, is that negative? No. So the way that you write that, you write 7 to the 3rd, and then that is negative. But there's no parentheses around it. So in the next example, we're actually about to go the other way. What I need you to understand is when there's no parentheses, you need to evaluate the power, do the repeated multiplication, and then it's negative at the end. Okay, so the negative is not connected to the repeated multiplication. All right, okay, so now let's evaluate. What I want you to do, I think you have a homework problem that asks you to do this. All right, and this is just helping us learn. So when it comes time for the test, you are not going to have to write all the repeated multiplication. All right, but I think it's especially important for the top two. Okay, -2 to the 4th power. How would we write it as repeated multiplication? Here's 2 options. Do you think the negative goes outside the parentheses? like we just saw in the last slide, and then the number inside? Or do you think the negative is connected to the repeated multiplication? It's connected because the base is in parentheses. Okay? So that means negative 2. I want you guys to write this down. Times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Okay? That means the negative was connected to the base. So how many negatives did I multiply? 4. So will my answer be positive or negative? Positive. This is an even number of negatives. Even number of negatives is a positive answer. It is positive 16. 2 times 2 is 4. Times 2 is 8. Times 2 is 16. All right? So I just want to give you guys a minute to see if you can use the last example to figure out how would you write the next negative 2 to the 4th as repeated multiplication. Use the last example as a reference. See if you can figure it out. How would you write this as repeated multiplication? Because of how it's written. What do you guys think? What do you think, Talanda?
Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Isn't that it?
No. Is that negative connected to the base? No. How would you do it, Tyler?
Oh!
I would do it negative and then parentheses.
Yes. Yep. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Because the negative 2 was not in parentheses, that means this negative is out here.
So that means that it wasn't necessarily attached.
Correct. It's not attached to the base. So now I multiply my 2's again, and I get 16, but then I have to bring my negative down, and my answer is negative 16. It's automatically going to be negative. All right? Okay, so let's look at 12 to the second power. Go ahead and try that one. What's 12 to the second power? Do the repeated multiplication. Show that. 12 to the second power. Miley?
I have a question.
Sure.
So with like the negative 2 squared by like 1, what if you had 5 2's? Would it be positive or?
On the first one? So because 5 is odd, it will be negative. Because now you're multiplying an odd number of negatives. So basically, there is a shortcut there. We normally don't teach it till Algebra 1. But when the negative is in parentheses in the base, if the exponent is even, it's going to be a positive answer. If the exponent is odd, it's going to be a negative answer.
Then on the second one, does it matter how many negatives you multiply? Is it always going to be negative?
It's always going to be negative. Yep. So you're probably going to see it raised to an even power on your test. So that way you've got to remember that it's not connected and automatically be negative. Talanda?
So, when it's in the first one, no matter if basically what you were saying for the second one, it'll always be negative, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Second one will always be negative if it's not in parentheses.
And then the first one, depending on whether it's
An even or an odd.
If the exponent is even or odd, that's where you go.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. All right, good question. What's 12 squared, guys?
144.
What's up? Yes. All right, 12 squared. That means 12 times 12, which is 144. We didn't do 12 times 2, did we?
I did, my bad.
Okay. 144. All right, how would we write? I want you to try. Okay, Taylor? I want you to try, both Taylors. Write this last one as repeated multiplication. Be careful with your parentheses and your negatives. Write it using your repeated multiplication. Okay? Yep, so it's a fraction. So, negative 1/6 times what? Negative 1/6 times what? Negative 1/6. Okay? Now, since it's a fraction, okay, I'm going to multiply my numerators. What's 1 times 1 times 1?
Oh, wait, 1.
1. Okay? And then what? 6 times 6 times 6? 216. Okay? Is my answer going to be positive or negative? Negative, because there were 3 negatives. All right, so whenever I evaluate a fraction, I evaluate the numerator and the denominator by that power. You with me, Anna? All right, stick in there. All right, stay with me. Okay, order of operations. Let's review order of operations. What is our saying? PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses means grouping. Simplify what's in parentheses if you can. There's my exponent. Multiply and divide, add and subtract. Okay? This is not a lesson on PEMDAS. All right? We're going to rely on your prior knowledge of order of operations. First problem. What do you do first, Rodney? Exponent. Okay, so let's do the exponent. 3 to the 4th power. You probably don't have that one memorized. Okay, try to do at least a couple of them. What's 3 times 3? What's 3 times 3? 9. What's 9 times 3? 27. What's 27 times 3? And you are right, Sam.
81.
It's 81. 27 times 3 is 81. Okay? So now I have 3 plus 2 times 81. All right? It's important that you write the steps because it keeps you clear on what comes next. So you have 2 options. Do you add and then multiply? Or do you multiply and then add? Yes. 2 times 81. Do y'all know the easy mental math way to do 2 times 81?
162.
2 times 8 is what? 16. And 2 times 1 is 2. So 162. 3 plus 162, 165. All right. Look at the next one over. What do you think is going to be a tricky part of this next question? I want you to look at it. I want to give everybody a minute to look at it. What do you think is going to be a little tricky about this next one? What do you think, Keaton?
It's in parentheses.
What is in parentheses?
Exponents.
Okay. So more specifically, Miley, can you expand on that?
It's tricky because there's an exponent and parentheses.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know whether to have an exponent or times everything by negative 3.
Okay. So look at this negative 10. Remember what we said? The base has to be in parentheses in order for the negative to repeat. So is the base itself in parentheses? No. The entire expression is, but negative 10 is not in parentheses. It would be a double parenthesis there, which means 10 times 10, and then it's negative. Okay? So this negative 10 squared means negative 10 times 10. Do y'all see that? That negative is not connected because negative 10 is not in parentheses. Okay? So what's negative 10 times 10? So negative 3 times negative 100 plus 70. What's negative 100 plus 70? Negative 30. Negative 3 times negative 30.
Equals 90.
Is it positive or negative 90?
Positive.
Positive. All right. Okay, I want you to try to do this third one on your own. 3 to the third minus 8 squared divided by 2. All right, so I guess your notes have whole numbers. So make it 3 to the third and 8 squared. All right, what is 3 to the third? What's 3 times 3 times 3?
27.
Minus
64.
divided by?
2.
All right, so Jonathan, do I subtract next or do I divide next? Divide. Do y'all know the easy, no calculators? How do you, well, you're allowed, but I don't want you to, because you can do this in your head. 64 divided by 2.
It's 32.
32. Half each number. Okay? There's nothing that makes me cringe more than seeing you use a calculator for stuff that you can do mental math. Okay? Half of 64 is 32. So 27 minus 32. Negative 5. Different signs. One's positive, one's negative. Negative 5. Does anybody remember what those straight up bars?
Absolute value.
Yes. Good job. Look at y'all. Absolute value. Okay. Does it matter if negative 3 is in parentheses or not? It's going to be negative either way. Okay?
Yeah,
Because it's a 3. Okay? So what's negative 3? Drummond, what's negative 3 to the third power? So it'd be 3 times 3 times 3. Very good. Negative 27. So absolute value of negative 27 divided by positive 27. What you guys think?
1.
Negative 1. But the absolute value of negative 1 is 1.
Okay, so absolute value is basically the opposite of what the absolute.
It's no sign. Absolute value is no sign. So it's not negative. It's technically not positive. It's just the number.
So like if the absolute value was negative 28, it would be 28.
28. But if the absolute value was 15, it would be 15.
So
It's just the number. So, yeah. All right. The annual profit earned by technology company. X years. Okay, so again, this is where your interpretations are important. You have to understand what X stands for in this problem. It's telling me it stands for years. After opening, it's represented by the equation P. What do you think P stands for? P stands for profit. P stands for profit. Okay? 0.1 x to the third plus 3. Okay? So how much more profit is earned in year 5 than in year 4? Okay? So where do you think you're going to plug in the 5 in the equation?
X.
Because X stands for what? Years. So if it gives me a value for years, I'm going to plug it in for X. Here we go. P equals 0.1 times 5 to the third power. I'm not raising 0.1 to the third power, only the 5 plus 3. So what do you do first?
Exponent.
Exponent. Okay, so you can use your calculators if you need to. 5 times 5
25.
times 5
125.
times 0.1. Okay, that's why you can use this. Not your phone, but calculator. Okay, 12.5 plus 3. What's 12.5 plus 3?
15.5.
15.5 what?
Wait, $15?
Is it?
That's 5.
Well, it should say in millions. It's millions.
15.5.
There must be some kind of image or something that we're missing. It's millions. $15.5 million profit. Wish I owned that company. Okay, that's year 5, but this is not what it's asking me. It's asking me how much more than in year 4. So guess what I have to find?
Year 4.
I got to find year 4 so I can subtract them. All right, go ahead and find year 4 and then subtract them. 0.1 times 4 to the third plus 3, because I take 4 and I plug that in for x. P equals, what was 4 times 4 times 4? 64 times 0.1, 6.4 plus 3, 3 is 9.4 million. Now I can answer the question. What is 15.5 minus 9.4? Okay, it's a $6.1 million
$1 million difference.
difference.
I'm a millionaire.
Okay,
Exactly.
using exponents. All right, any questions?
No, ma'am.
All right, that's it for your lesson today.
So